Alright, man. Hey, we back, man. I know y'all enjoyed that mix with the homie Dre, Mr. Fourth Quarter. Hey, but look, sitting at the table, man, we got a brother I think everybody need to hear from today, man. We got brother Chris Norris. He's a founder of GRAYS Group, LLC, and the director of the Knights of Pythagoras Mentor Group. So I think, man, how you doing, my brother?
Man, all is well, brother. Please God always.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
No doubt.
So, man, tell us a little bit about what is the GRAYS Group.
All right, so GRAYS Group, man, is mental health organization, man. I'm licensed as a professional counselor, certified as addiction counselor with the state of Georgia. Been working with youth, man, forever. So back in 2007, man, we saw a need in the community. I'm a steep, in African culture and heritage. So it was a Negro baseball team, of course, called Homestead GRAYS, and I was inspired by that name. And from that, I drew the acronym as far as naming my organization, my company, which is gradually raising the awareness of youth in society. But the A is interchangeable because it can be African youth, it can be African-American youth, it can be Africans in your society, So it was just all about really raising the awareness, raising the conscious level in regards to our people within the African community. So.
Word. Okay. So how long have you guys been in existence?
GRAYS has been in existence since 2007. That's when I formally jumped out and began to start doing contractual work. But this RBG movement been out here forever. So, and I've been working with youth since 2000. So it was inspired by that and some other things. But and officially since 2007. So
in 2000, I know you say you're working with youth, but what really got you into the counseling aspect?
Man, when I was 18 years old, I had a full football scholarship to Valdosta State University. My freshman year, I got stabbed 9 times, actually died twice while they was in the process of trying to save me. So I lost, any meaning in regards to being able to provide an income or provide something for my mom, growing up, with a single black woman in the household per se, But after that, man, I came back to Augusta. My oldest son now was born, and at that point, at that time, I just saw things begin to start happening. One of my jugglers was a dude by the name of Richard Hill, man, who was a trainer out at the YDC. So him and one of his partners actually kind of raised me and brought me in. He told me, hey, son, what do you think about working with the youth? And I said, it sounds good. I can relate. I can connect. And from that point, it was... everything started moving up here from there, man. So
good.
Yeah.
Shout out for that. Yeah, for real. So tell me about this then. So like I know dealing with youth a lot of times is hard. And you say you have to connect. What were some of the obstacles that you kind of faced in that process with starting the whole organization?
The biggest process, man, of course, was that guap, man.
Yeah.
And really, the biggest thing was also getting away from mainstream. And Eurostream or Eurocentric view of the world, and then having to break that cycle of being dictated how you're going to go in and financially be able to provide for your family.
Right.
And that was the biggest part, letting go of that rope, man, because it's like these ideologies that we've been dealing with has controlled us for so long so that when you have something that you are passionate about, when the finance is not there, you kind of fall victim to scare. Yeah, because you like, hey, I got to have some security. You need insurance. You got all these things that this, this establishment, quote unquote, gives you that you technically can't get on your own.
Yeah, but it's up to you to take the initiative.
It's up to you to take the initiative. And you decided, and I just decided that, man, I just didn't want to be that guy, that brother that wasn't able to go in and participate in his child's life.
Yeah.
And having that be dictated to me. Yeah. And that was really what drove me because I wanted to be involved in my son's life.
Right.
I wanted to make sure that my boys had me there if it was a function at school or in the community. You ain't going to tell me what I can and can't do. And that was what drove me to just kind of be in practice for myself. I couldn't stand having somebody tell me what I can and can't do. So,
Knights of Pythagoras.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's that? Talk to me.
Oh, man, that is the Knights of Pythagoras youth organization that is sponsored by the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge. It's not only in Georgia, but technically I'm here in Georgia as a member of Banneker Lodge number 3, located right here on Lane and Walker Boulevard. So that's our youth organization where we do what we call manhood training. That is kind of part of things that we incorporate. I was already doing through GRAYS, but it's from madness to manhood, where we take young men between the ages of 8 to 20, and we begin to teach them about the art and science of manhood. And we teach them that from a African-centered perspective, whereas we're pulling from either the principles or the basic 7 tenets or principles that you have in regards to ma'at. Right, and being here in humanity, then I'm pretty sure Brother Baruda and Sister Denise had the opportunity to rap to y'all about that. But either we're pulling from our art or we're pulling from those principles of Kwanzaa, which means so much more than just for the 7 days that you lay them out for. And what we wanted to do was incorporate that into a rites of passage program that was geared towards evolving our young man from a male way of thinking where 95% of the decision that they make is from the waist down. In other words, that penis is doing their thinking and it's impulsive. So we haven't yet begun to start utilizing, that tool that we have on our shoulder, that should be guiding us in our principle, in which it was very difficult. So the Knights of Pythagoras allowed us to go in and focus on knowledge of self-training. And Prince Hall Masonry in and of itself, man, has always spearheaded so many, whether it's W.B. Du Bois, whether it's Martin Delaney, people you never hear about, Henry Highland Garnett, even when you move up to now where you're talking about with the Jesse Jackson, all of these brothers also were Prince Hall. So that's always been at the forefront of that movement. And with our particular Knights of Pythagoras, this is the oldest council that you have in the state of Georgia. So our lodge has been here since 1866. So you hadn't even got the barrel from the cannons hadn't even dried, and the Civil War was still in place. So, Augusta has always been instrumental, and especially when we begin to start talking about it, because a lot of people throw shade and everything else, but, man, that Knights of Pythagoras is my heart, bro. That is where we get into this whole thing where we're really in the business of making sure that we program and educate and train our young men to be successful in life, beyond what their wildest imagination can be, and don't allow anybody to dictate to them.
Because we program from years of brutality, and we don't even know it. What I mean? And
Correct.
it's like to be able to get to the young brothers and sisters and just kind of open them up to knowledge, man. I was telling, I love to learn stuff now.
Yes, sir.
And the
Yes,
more
sir.
I learn, the more I know I don't really know nothing.
Oh, no doubt.
Because like, as soon
No
as you learn this, it opened up a whole nother box. It's like, dang, okay, well, I'm gonna learn it too.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
So it's
Correct.
an ever-ending cycle of knowledge. So that's dope, man. 10 minutes. So working with the young brothers, man, what are some things that you're noticing with the youth in today's world right now?
But that gas, man, I'm just gonna be, on Front Street. It
You
is
saying gas?
that
as
gas,
in,
that great. What I call it, man, is the great equalizer, man. That marijuana, man. That weed.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a very difficult process, man. Because they're not understanding how it pushes white male supremacy or the white supremacy agenda. Because you have to go in and find a way to go in and neutralize people. And for our youth, right? And there's no knock on it. I don't. But I'm trying to explain to them that, man, before you turn 18, you need to understand this is the way they're going to get you in the system, right? This is perpetuated, so they're using that as a method to control. And I think, like Brother Wesley Muhammad came in and he began to start talking about some different things in regards. I've been dealing with substance abuse for years, man,
Right.
And that's what we saw, man, is that a lot of these young brothers and these young sisters as well, through social media, social media has went in and created what we like to consider that narcissistic personality disorder.
Yeah.
I can become anybody I want to be.
Yes.
And
Yes.
last year,
bad.
exactly. Last year you was nobody. This year, here it is. You got 1,000 people, liking you,
Like
and
comment.
all of a sudden
That's when
you
they go back to say the system
Yes.
set you up for failure.
every time,
Right.
every time. It is by design.
Yeah, but
you know.
you got to learn how to use it and tweak
You
it
do.
yourself.
That's right.
You do, man.
So you said something really interesting to me. So you was like, it's a system already put in place. So I kind of feel like religion, is, in some sense, kind of does the same thing to our people because religion is a tradition to me. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So
Correct.
from a traditional standpoint, people get caught up in what used to happen instead of opening their mind to what can happen now.
Right.
So how do you think with the youth and religion, do you see a lot of that with the kids as far as having an understanding of a higher power and trying to get connected. I tell people all the time, get connected. You know what I'm saying?
I tell them the same thing that Brother Malcolm told the brothers when he was fellowshipping back in the day. If your religion ain't did no more for you than what it's done today, leave it down there in the basement when you come to talk to me. Right? So when we meet, we're going to meet as, as Africans. Right? We're going to come in, and at that point, at that time, we have something in common. So, yeah, it's push. What I do is I just check that part because we actually, I'm more geared towards African spirituality. I'm more geared towards that particular system that governs us as African before we had European invasion.
Okay.
Right? So you got to go back and start dipping into when you had the Hyksos that invaded during the 11th dynasty, right? You have to go in and start talking about the principles that were taking place prior to that. Right. So even when you begin to start talking about quote unquote, religion, the word re in regards to anything simply means to tie back.
Right.
So we have a principle, and then also what we realize is a method of control. Right? It's something that I'm going to use to govern you so that I can maintain the status quo. It's no different than a educational institution that we're sending our children to.
Wow.
So.
Powerful.
I got to stop, bro. We at the dinner table.
Yeah.
I'm full already. Because I'm eating, bro. I can't even say nothing. I got to listen.
When he told her, when he walked up and said hotel, I already know what's going on. It's like, man, like I say, it's just so much knowledge out there, man.
Yes,
I remember listening to, I tell people, my favorite group, Good Amount, whatever.
Yes, sir.
CeeLo said, he said we got to get our spirit and our mind back. Like, I told somebody that, I said, man, look, they can take every worldly possession from you.
That's right.
But you can't let nobody take your spirit and your mind. That's yours.
Yes, sir.
That's for you.
Right.
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
33, but I'm trying to get there. I want to be a person who, I want to speak like that when I get
Hey, man,
You good, boy?
I want to shoot. Man, a year ago, bro, I was in the hospital bed couldn't walk. I couldn't lift my own leg. So everything I had was taken from me. Everything I thought I needed was taken from me. The only thing I could live on was my connection, man, and it just got stronger after that. So it's like, I give it all. You know what I'm saying?
You know I'm vibing with the diabetes thing, man. We know
man,
where
you
it's
already
at.
know what time it is.
I'm with you on that, brother.
Yeah.
We already
You
know.
will be humble.
So,
That's my curse.
so with the two programs you got, as far as the Knights of Pythagoras, see, you ain't know I was going to know how to say that. See, I bet you were kind of, why you, see that?
Get out my mind, because I was going to say.
I know.
Say it one more time.
See, we program. See, you program, brother. You programmed to down me because you thought I was gonna mess it up. I went to Glen Hill, bro.
I went there with you too, bro.
I went algebra 2.
Okay.
I know all about it.
All right.
All right. So tell us some things that's coming up with the program, brother, that people can kind of like look at and get into. You know what I'm saying? I think, man, one thing I can say about Augusta right now, the city is buzzing with support for each other. So
Right.
we want to be able to support where we,
Right.
So what y'all got coming up?
So right now, GRAYS, man, it's the same all year round. We out here in these trenches. We're one of the few agencies that do in-home counseling.
Okay.
So we go to wherever it is that our people need us at. We don't always go in and kind of have them come to the office to meet us. We're going to meet them wherever. We go out and politic with a lot of the brothers on the block, a lot of the sisters on the block. They know what the mission is about, so that's always the case in regards to GRAYS. The Knights of Pythagoras, we have a black tie event coming up in either November or December. We're kind of juggling around right now. Right now, we're hoping to link up with maybe like Dominique Bond and Ace Ambition. So what we're doing is that we're trying to create what we consider to be the ultimate rites of passage program for our teenagers.
Yeah.
Right? Because as well as I do, this summer you see that it is a blatant disregard, man, for the teenagers. We got all kind of programs for everybody 12 and under, but we don't have anything for 13 and up.
Right.
And because we don't offer them anything, this is where we get into they create. Whether you want it or not, they're going to create it because they need something to sustain them.
They need that mental.
They do. And they want that challenge.
Occupy that mind at that time.
Right. They want that challenge. So you create and what we do is we create various incentives program. Like, for example, we was partnering with the Augusta Partnership to do a teenage pregnancy prevention initiative because we understood that HIV is running rampant, right? Not only that, but STDs and STI, where I think Augusta ranks 3rd in the state of Georgia, and I think they're ranked 60 in the nation. So, we got a lot of things, and when you go in the school system, in and of itself, is trying to tell you, you're not taking into consideration. The one thing that I always tell them, don't have a meeting about children or youth and not include them.
Right.
When you give them no voice, they will create a voice, which we see with a lot of bucking and rebellion, right?
Right.
So it is in our spirit that's African. That is that maroon space that we're in. That we have our brothers that got off of that ship. Ain't nobody volunteered to have them brought here. Not one brother or sister volunteered. Right? So, I know I'm going kind of, but it all connects back because even when you talk about the name of the organization, for example, when we say the Knights of Pythagoras, right? What we understood is that Pythagoras was a Greek mathematician. But what we ain't going in, and this is why the KOP is so important, because I have to pull that conversation out of them to explain to them that Pythagoras, right, in his wilderness, when he was lost, he yelled down the stream, Eureka. And that word translated into I found it. So what we had to begin to start asking is, what were you looking for? Who gave you a problem that you needed to find the answer to? So when you study Greek origins of things, what you realize is that the Greeks and the Romans always sent their greatest and their brightest minds to Africa to study at the feet of our master teachers. And then when they came back to wherever they were, they began to start trying to implement what they learned. So Socrates was killed. Right? He drunk the hemlock. Why? Because he tried to come back and teach a system of monotheism that he didn't understand. So when you are in this space, you understand that in African space, you couldn't have something that existed and it not be paid homage to deity. And that's where they got that confusion about we going in and having a polytheistic view. We've always had one supreme deity. So now when we go in and we begin to start adopting other things, it creates a problem, right? Because now what you're trying to say is that we done lied that everything that came out of Kemet, right? Of course, Egypt was named Kemet before it was named Egypt, right? And Kemet is land of the black. So even when you go into this classroom, and this is the conflict that we're meeting with, because when I go in and tell my son chemistry teacher to remind him that the word chem means black, right? Understand that every individual that has ever been created, right, through the supreme architect of the universe, all started out as a black dot, bruh. Right? Richard King 101, MD, right? So you go in and you start to pulling up on this, because now what we're seeing is this awakening that's taking place, right? We're seeing what we're talking about either Uachet or Diachet in regards to the Eye of Heru, right? Most people reference it as Eye of Horus, but typically what you're talking about is the Eye of Heru. So when we're talking about the Knights of Pythagoras, we understand that it's a mathematical system, right? When we're talking about either with papyrus, Ryan, or whatever, right? When we have guys like Asa Hilliard who have went in and documented the contributions, man, that Africans made to the field of math, right? Who am I to go in and name something of such great importance after this Greek man, when we understand that this Greek man got it from an African man? Right? So that even within the Knights of Pythagoras, I have to explain that part of it, because what we're doing is that we can't allow anybody to start your history off with slavery. Whatever you do, you don't start no conversation off with me at this point and at this time.
Right.
Not in 1492, right? Not in 1392. So you go in and you say 16th generation, for example, and you take that and say, okay, we're going to calculate this, man. It took almost 282,000 people just to make you. And that's only here on this American soil. But you got to remind yourself, as we talk about this Knights of Pythagoras, man, that Columbus, right, can't discover a land where you already had inhabitants at. You can't go in, and you can't furthermore go in and say, look, man, Africans had sailed up and down the Guinea coast 3,000 years from Columbus. So don't quote me on it. Go pull up Ivan Van Sertima and Christopher Columbus, right? So go pull up his book, right? They came before Columbus, right? Pull up anything on John Henry Clark. Pull up anything on Joseph Ben Yakin, and pull up anything that you have right now with some of the guys. Man, this stuff has been laid out.
I think,
so it's just all over, man. So
man, you just dropped like
What?
look.
So
look,
Hey, man, one thing about our community, brother.
why everybody want to talk?
Right.
Because it's profound knowledge, man. And that's what we so lack. But we won't. We just don't know we need. We don't know what we want right now.
Yes, sir.
You know
Yes,
what I'm
sir.
saying? You hear people searching and trying to find and trying to understand this. And one thing, 10 years ago, people ain't really question stuff like they do now.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But now everybody question, even the young little brothers and sisters trying to find out, well, why this don't even make no sense. Like when you start applying logic to your life, like, wait a minute,
Absolutely.
hold up, Jack. That don't something don't add up.
Yes,
you know what I'm
sir.
saying?
Yes,
So,
sir.
Start to ask
man,
questions.
how can people get in contact with you Hold on. Kurt, say what you finna say, brother. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Usually when somebody come here and they put a stamp on me, I end up putting a stamp on him, like Justin DeLoach. He got to get it, bro.
What you gonna get?
African Bible, bro.
Mm.
Every word he spoke came result back to black.
Mm-hmm.
And it stand on something. Then, like, we down here, I don't know if y'all know, we down here at the Madden Tree House. Shout out to them. Because the vibe in here.
Yes, sir.
And his word at the same time, man.
It's all energy, bro.
Like, you get what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And it's a vibing moment. And then we here at the dinner table. So, bro, you got it, bro. 520 brand you right now.
Hey,
Appreciate
man.
it, Ward.
African Bible, bro.
Appreciate
You got it, bro. I'm telling you, man. Like, I'm sitting here, I'm like, now they're looking at me, man. I'm tapping on the table trying to get my word out. I don't even know what to say. I'm trying to stop it, but
I do want to ask you something.
Bro.
I wonder how much time we got. But look, let me ask you, how do you feel about Dr. Umar Johnson?
Man,
Because just I'm hearing you, and I was just like, with the Pan-Africanism and all that, like, how do you take him? Like, some people can take him, some people can't,
good question. Really, I don't. And what I mean by that is we have to be careful, right? And as an African people, man, we are spiritually in tune to the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what we do is that we play off of your spirit, right? You have certain people that will play off of your spirit, and because you are in between transitions, right? And when we begin to start talking about religion, right, you have to pay attention to the organs in the church. Right, everything is kind of set up and it's tuned in, and it's at a certain period and a certain time where certain things are able to invade your spirit. Right, so right now, with everything that's going on, man, Brother Umar Johnson, man, like I said, he speaks to that spirit. Some of the things that he speaks on, I'm very in favor of because I'm really not caught up in whether or not he got a doctorate or whatever, right? Because the first person who got a doctorate got it from somebody who didn't have one. And we forget about that part. You feel what I'm saying?
now
right?
you see what I'm saying.
So, and with Umar, man, the thing, my biggest issue with Brother Umar Johnson, man, is that you didn't start this conversation. See, when we go void of resources and technically being able to quote or being able to state our sources where we got the information from. So when he's talking about the SPEDS, right, when he's talking about education, right, because his whole thing is educational psychology for the most part, he began to start dabbing, and we start having conversation about psychotropic medications, right, dealing with addictions. I understand psychotropic medications. I understand back in 1986 when Dr. Jawanza Kajunfu was writing about why children shouldn't be taking Ritalin at the time, because Ritalin has the same molecular makeup and structure that crack cocaine did. Wow. So when you begin to understand the brain, what we do is that psychiatrists treat with medications. Psychologists, professional counselors, and therapists, we treat with what we call apt reaction, and what we use is a talking cure, which is very similar to our African ancestry when they used them talking drums. Y'all feel what I'm saying? Right? So now what you have is that you got a brother who is kind of coming out, making it seem as if he was the one that went in and did the research and came up with this. And I'm like, hold on, you're not mentioning John Henry Clark, Makaru.
So you're not paying homage to...
You ain't paying homage to none of these brothers that came before you, So you, and that is the issue, because there are books that have been written that have been talked about in regards to what he's speaking about. This is not new information, but when you don't pay homage to the ancestors and the elders that came before you, now we're in this situation where we're talking about narcissism. So that's the social media part of it. Had it not been for social media, do we still get the same message from this brother? Right. Social media has been able to elevate, and like I was just put somebody the other day, let me tell you something. A documentary does not replace a book. It doesn't. Hidden Colors 1 through 4 does not replace a book. Because what they're speaking on in Hidden Colors 1, 3, and 4 has already been written.
It's reference points.
These are reference points. Just to bring it out now because we're in a different period. But when you're referencing these points and you're not reminding us that we have to combat illiteracy, right? That's what we're struggling with, man. Even through the KOP with the Knights of Pythagoras and great, man, we're combating illiteracy. We just don't do counseling. We have to go in and heal that entire individual. So the mayor has a reading program that he's doing, right? This power reading lunch. Yeah. I'm like, well, how many of these characters that we're reading to are going to look like us? So we're trying to donate, African calendars, right? And just reading out 365 facts is that important. So that's the problem that I have with Brother Umar Johnson. Other than that, he's a good brother. He has a wealth of information, but again, had it not been for this social media, and we forget that television is social media. Had it not been for this, right, and these DVDs, do we go in and applaud this brother the same way? Because what he's not doing is he's not identifying any substance of the elders that actually paved the way for him.
Because if you was actually listening to his teachings, you would think, to your point, it's coming from him. And
Correct.
He's not giving you a reference point for you to even go back and study. And I think it's so important to know, all right, well, what you got? I always tell people, dealing facts. Where you got that from? So I can go find out myself. Because you know what I'm saying? You may read it and get your understanding. I may read it and get something totally, you know what I'm saying?
Correct.
But I need to know where it came from. So, yeah.
Correct. Yeah,
it's been good. But I promise you, I ain't expect this. But how can people get in contact with you in any form?
So they can email me at Norris at GRAYS Group, GRAYS, GROUP, LLC.com. On the book, it's just Chris Norris. You'll see me with the booba on, so, always promoting Africa. They can go to my website, www.graysgroupllc.com. They can contact me there. It ain't hard. Phone number 706-394-5073. That's been that same number for the last 15 years, I think. So at any point at any time, man, they can just, reach out to me and touch me, brother. I ain't hard to get in contact with at all.
I feel like we need a part 2, man. I got questions, man. I want to talk some more. But, yeah, man. Hey,
like a sponge over here.
Y'all got anything for the brother, man? Like you
man said, don't forget Kim mean black. If you remember that, then you mean black means African Bible at the table.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Man, we in the building.
Man, we certainly appreciate you coming out and really dropping some knowledge.
Yeah.
And I just say to encourage you, man, young brothers like myself and you got this age group, man, where you probably, I say 25, that's when people really start questioning to like, we want to know. Like, the information you get, I want to know. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm with it. Let us know, man. Reach out. Pull everybody in. It take that whole village, man, till we get that village working
No
right.
doubt. No
you know
doubt.
what I'm saying?
No
Especially, I tell you, got to start in small
It's
villages.
scary.
But we can hear the whole community. We got to start out in small
It's
villages.
scary, man. Some of the stuff he done said, like he said, you got to pay homage. I done hear them say Dr. King. I done hear you say you got to go back. I hear stuff that you done said that I done heard in school, but they won't tell it that way.
Correct.
You feel me?
Correct.
They tell about Christopher Columbus, but they don't tell it that way. You get me?
Right.
Yeah.
And I hear you say all this stuff, man, and it's a revert. Like, you got to go back and you got to use your brain process and just think about what somebody
CeeLo
actually
said, I ain't know our history was purposely hidden. Like, I remember, it didn't register till I got older. But, man, give us
Mac and
3
that CeeLo.
books. 3 books that we can go out and read that'll help us on journeys. Whatever journey we're trying to start. What are 3 books you
No, man, me and my brother just talking about this. I would say the first book that I would recommend is probably Africans in World History by John Henry Clark. It's an easy read. It's a potent book, but it's an easy read, man. Really user-friendly in regards to just pinpointing points throughout history. I also would go in and strongly recommend, if we're going to put our grown folks' pants on, all right, Urugu by Mama Marimba Annie. That's a must-have. You got to get that book if you're serious about it. Another one that I would strongly recommend is the African World History Project. I'm going to give you 4 because Amos Wilson has the blueprint for Black Power. So you have to have those. If you have those 4 books in your library, right? I ain't going to even speak about LaRon Bennett and Before the Mayflower, like I slipped that one in, right? The Nile Valley Contribution to Civilization by Anthony Browder, because you have to be able to get these reference points. They came before Columbus. I mentioned, Ivan Van Sertima, I'm a therapist, you know what I'm saying? So any book that you have by Naeem Akbar, Vision for Black Men is really what set me on my journey back in 2000. When he spoke about the courage of King, he spoke about the power of Malcolm. He began to start speaking about Du Bois. He began to start speaking about dissecting the conflict, anything that you have on Booker T. Washington, studying the relationship between Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois.
Man, you got to put this down
Souls
on
of Black
Facebook
folks.
somewhere, man.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
got it, bro.
So, and the good question is because what we've done is that we answered. You know, it's ironic that we're here, right? I call these guys here the 3DBs, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's them. I call them damn Davis boys, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they always bring it, man. These brothers here, you know, Devin is kind of related, right? He actually has a child by my first cousin.
Okay.
You know, so we've been knowing each other forever, man. So we issued, Lord Jamar had issued the book phone challenge.
Yeah.
Right? So I was one of the ones that answered the challenges for us here. You know, and what he did is that, you know, of course it was in response to Jay-Z on that 444 and talking about, you know, Future and all these guys here with this money phone challenge.
Right.
And, you know, how stupid it is for us to go in. So Lord Jamar went in and said, hey, look, I'm going to issue the book phone challenge. You know, so if you go to my page, you'll see where I'm on here stunned with all these books, right, like they say. But, you know, those books are books that I've read. You know, I'm a readaholic, man. Like I said, we're combating illiteracy. So we're issuing that challenge, right, to go in and post your library online, you know. And what we have to think about, man, and I'm going to say this real quick because Hamilton Bookstore used to be located right here. The importance of what we have with the humanity, man, is the spirit of the African still being able to stay alive. You understand? When you walk through that door, you're walking, you know, through Ethiopia, you're walking through Ghana, you're walking through Mali, Songhay, you're walking through all of the things, and you see that we still begin to live this out, right? So when they went in and decided that, Hamilton went in and decided to close the bookstore, man, that was a part of us that they left void now. Because in this city, I don't trust Barnes & Noble. Right? I just went in and picked up CLR James down at FAMU. I asked them, can they adopt me to historical black college and university because I didn't graduate from one. And the spirit is totally different when you step in our institutions than it is in any other institution, right? So we began to start talking about that. You began to start quizzing people about, name me some farmers besides George Washington Carver.
Yeah.
What black folks have contributed, but if they shut down our institutions today, brother, what do we have? You can't go and get no gas. You can't go and get no food. Right? You can't feed your wife. You can't feed your children. You can't feed your daughter. Right? Those are the challenges that we're putting out there to the Knights of Pythagoras. Those are the challenges we put out through GRAYS, man, even through our counseling process because we do African-centered counseling. Right? Where our stories and our narratives is told through the eyes of an African and we don't pretend to go in to be anybody else. Yeah. So those are the things that we have to go in and challenge. So that's what we're talking about. The books is where you're going to get that information from. If you see a movie come out, read the book. Right? Read the book and then go in and see whether or not it is what it is. Because they're going to leave out some very vital points because they can't put it in there, even with Nat Turner.
Big facts.
Yes.
Right? You know,
Big
that's
facts.
it. That's it. And like, that's the whole thing that we're pushing, facts, bro.
Hey, man, when I tell
Not
you,
even big facts.
when I tell you, man, hey, that was beautiful, man. But, bro, we appreciate you coming through and just dropping all that knowledge to us.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt.
Hey, but what we're going to do, we're going to get a couple songs in this jank, and we got Monet going to give us some motivation minutes. Yeah.